Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Bulldog Breakdown. I'm your host, as always, James Levasseur. And with me today, we have the Rockland Town Administrator, Douglas Lapp. Mr. Lapp, thank you for coming on the show today. It is really great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So you ready to get started?
Ready to go.
All right, so my first question I have for you is, how long have you been the Town Administrator?
Sure, a little over 6 years. I started in July of 2019.
And how long do you plan to be the Administrator?
That's a great question. Like every other town administrator, I operate under a contract under the Board of Selectmen. So I have 1 year left on my contract. I'm in my last year now. So if the board sees fit to give me another 3-year contract, I intend on being here for that time.
All right, and can you explain the role the Town Administrator plays in town government with a select board?
Sure. So the simplest way to think about it is the select board are the chief executive officers. They're the highest policy-making officials in town. They set the overall direction, they set the priorities, and then it's on me and my role to implement what they want to do. And I do that with all the different town staff that work for the town. The only exception really is the school department. The school is really an independent entity under the school committee. So take the school department out of it, essentially all the other departments fall within my jurisdiction, and I help them implement the policy initiatives of the select board.
Alrighty, and tell us about the International City Manager Association and your involvement with it, and also what does that mean for the town?
Sure. So like many professions, there are trade groups or associations that represent different professions. And so town administrators or town managers or city managers, they're all generally the same type of job. In the state, there's a state association, the Mass Municipal Managers Association, and then the larger umbrella above that is the International City Manager Association. So it's essentially just a worldwide association of city managers. They have conferences every year. They have exchange programs, continuing education, all types of things like that to help share information, continue to professionalize the job, and to help improve communities throughout the world. And I've been an active member for 20 years now.
And where does money get divided up, and how is it decided where it's needed to be spent in budget?
Sure. So that's a big question. So there's different ways to answer it. So we get some funds in town that is earmarked specifically for certain purposes. So there could be federal money that can only be used for education, or some state money that can only be used for education, or can only be used, say, for road projects, things like that. So that's already decided by the time we get it. Other types of revenue, our largest revenue source goes into the general fund, and that would be, say, for example, property tax revenues. So there's a lot of different discussions over how that gets allocated. Rockland is a little unique in that there's actually an agreement, a memorandum of understanding that was put in place years before I got here that's essentially a revenue sharing agreement. And there's a specific list of different types of revenue that comes into the town. And the select board in the past and the school committee in the past reached an agreement where essentially it's referred to as a 70-30 split. So 70% of that revenue goes toward school costs to support the school district, and 30% goes toward everything else, all the other general government operations. So there's that overall agreement, that 70-30 split. Some revenue is earmarked specifically in certain areas, and then to the extent that there's anything else that isn't covered under that, it's something that gets discussed publicly throughout the whole budget season, throughout the fall and the winter, in the finance committee with the select board, and then ultimately recommendations go to town meeting.
And how can people have a say on where money is spent?
Sure. So the simplest answer to that is to go to town meeting. So town meeting in our form of government is essentially what the legislature is in the state government, or what Congress is at the federal government. That's the voters' opportunity to have a say in how money gets spent. We cannot spend any money unless it gets appropriated by voters at town meeting. And we have what's referred to as an open town meeting, which means any registered voter can attend. Different forms of government have what's referred to as a representative town meeting, where people vote for representatives in different precincts, and only those elected representatives can attend town meeting. That's not the way it works in Rockland. Open town meeting, any registered voter can attend, and I always encourage all voters to participate.
And I've learned that Rockland usually holds meetings after like elections or votes, and that is different from all the other towns. Why is that?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, that came up recently with the fire station project. So our annual town election is the second Saturday in April, and our annual town meeting is the first Monday in May. And the last town I worked in, and most others, as you said, there's generally town meeting first, the election after. And I actually think that's a better way to do it, because at town meeting, voters can ask questions, there could be presentations, you can get a lot of information shared to help people make an educated vote. So unfortunately, we have our election before town meeting, which means people have to go to the ballot without having the benefit of hearing that discussion at town meeting. The reason why, to answer your question, is in our town charter, and our charter is essentially the constitution for the town, it specifically lists the second Saturday in April as the date for our annual town election. And the annual town meeting, per the charter, is set by the select board. And by tradition, it's been that first Monday in May for many, many decades. So in order to change the date of the election, you'd have to change our town charter. And I could talk more about that if you'd like, but that's a very involved process. It takes votes at town meeting, it takes an act of the state legislature and the governor. So the other way you could think about changing it would be, well, why don't we just move the annual town meeting date to before the second Saturday in April? The problem with that is that would make it very, very difficult to do our town budget, because the earlier we go, the less information we have. So it's the best move would be eventually someday update our town charter and move the date of the annual town election to after the date of annual town meeting. But we're kind of stuck with it now because of the charter's requirements for the election and because of the timing necessary to get the budget done properly for a town meeting.
And what are the town's biggest plans in the upcoming years?
So when you say biggest plans, can you be a little bit more specific, or can I answer that just sort of any way I want?
You can answer it any way you want.
Sure. So there's three big projects that we're working on now. One is the reconstruction of the running track on Reed Street. That's going to be a great project. We're going to completely renovate that track, reconstruct it so the track team at the high school can use it for track meets. It'll also involve completely renovating the athletic field, the soccer lacrosse field in the middle with new irrigation. It's also going to have lights and bleachers. So that's a great project, roughly $3 million that voters approved. That's one. Another one is we are looking at a pretty significant project to improve the old landfill that's on the corner of Pleasant Street and VFW Drive. So I'm not sure if many people are aware that there was an old landfill there that was active. It's since been discontinued, but it's never properly been capped. And what capped means is literally a physical cap barrier over the top, that protects the environment and the surrounding properties. The State Department of Environmental Protection is going to require that the town properly do that per all state regulations, which will cost us easily over $5 million. And that money would have to come from taxpayers. Fortunately, we're working on a project now to bring in private developers that could bring in additional material, additional fill, construction debris into that site. We would not charge them a fee for that, so they would save a lot of money by not having to pay to dispose of it. But then those developers would pay 100% of the costs to properly cap that landfill per state requirements, and then put some recreational amenities on top. Could be, fitness stations or, walking trails, a dog park, all different types of things. Also possibly even monetary contributions to help us improve other parks in town. So I know it's a little bit of an odd project, but it's really important because it's going to help protect the environment, save taxpayers over $5 million, and provide us with other amenities. The last project, I saved kind of the biggest for last. Voters just approved the fire station project, so we're going to be building a new fire station headquarters. We'll be relocating it from the current station on Union Street over to the old Lincoln School, which is on the corner of Church and Howard Streets. That's a little over a $26 million project. We just got voter approval. the final voter approval at the ballot on September 13th. So that's probably the biggest one we have in the near term.
A question about the fire station. What are the main challenges that you foresee happening from bringing the fire station from approval to then completion?
The biggest problem so I'd say probably the single biggest concern that I have is just going to be the continued increase in costs, the inflation that's been hitting the construction sector of our economy. So we have a budget, it's $26.1 million, that's what voters authorized. We're not going to go above that. But unfortunately, costs continue to rise, and so it's going to be a real challenge to be able to work within that budget, but we will do it. And the way that we'll accomplish that will be either by cutting back, shrinking the design and the program within the project, or maybe we'll try to also look at some alternative ways to construct the building using things like pre-engineered or prefabricated components that are manufactured off-site to help reduce the cost. So we'll look at whatever tools are available to us, but we have to follow very strict public construction law rules and regulations, and we're subject to what the private sector charges for these types of construction projects.
Can you provide a general overview of how much of a tax increase there will be for the fire station, and when the taxpayers will see that sort of come into play?
Yep, sure. So that's a great question. That's a little bit more involved, which I'd want to kind of prepare and bring more specific numbers. But we do have, I should highlight, on the town website which is rockland-ma.gov, on the fire department's webpage. On the left-hand side, there's a shortcut button for the fire station project, and there's actually a calculator. So someone can put in what the assessed value of their property is, and they'll get the actual numbers. If memory serves me correct, it's around $225 per year for 30 years, assuming that we have to pay those bonds for 30 years. I could talk later, if you're interested, about different changes in our finances that in the coming years might be able to help defray that a bit. But for an average valued single-family home, I think the average value of a single-family home now is around $519,000. It'd be around $225 per year, and that really wouldn't start for another year or two.
And what other big projects have you seen the town adopt during your tenure as town administrator?
Well, certainly one of the biggest is the construction of the Phelps Elementary School. That started before I came on board, but I was fortunate enough to be involved in that project midway through, all the way through completion. Really proud to have one small part in a project that came in on time and under budget. So that's certainly a very significant one. Two others that are ongoing now and are also going to be continuing to be done in the future are significant infrastructure improvements at our wastewater treatment plant, our sewer plant, and also our water treatment plant at the Abington-Rockland Joint Waterworks. We can talk more about that if you have questions about economic development and infrastructure, but those two things on the sewer side, that treatment plant is out of date. It's past its useful life. It was built in the 60s, updated in the 80s, and now it's in need of significant improvements. We're under an administrative order from the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, so we have to make improvements. The first phase of that, just phase one, is about $35 million, and that design is underway right now. And on the water side, the main part of that improvement project involves filtration to help remove PFAS, the forever chemicals, from the water supply. They're well underway under construction and are pretty close to completion. That was around a $26 million project at the Abington-Rockland Joint Waterworks. So there's two other ones that I've had some involvement in to differing degrees, and they're critically important for the town.
And what was the budget process for the making of the Phelps Elementary School?
Sure. So it was a pretty traditional process, and what's important to note for that project is that we got significant reimbursement from the state through the Mass State School Building Authority. So the way that process works, if you want that state money, you have to follow their process. It starts with doing a procurement process to hire an architect. They meet with the town, and a building committee to do a feasibility study to understand what the needs are of the town, what it is they're looking to build. Then the state reviews that. There's a lot of back and forth, and as part of that, there's a cost estimate that gets done by an independent third party, and there's companies that's all they do is construction cost estimating. So they estimate what that project's going to cost. Then the building committee can decide, oh, is this too much? Should we carve it back? Should we add more? And then ultimately, once a decision is made, this is what we think the community needs, this is what we think the project's going to cost, then it has to go before voters. And anytime you're going to raise taxes for a project, it's a two-step process. It has to have an approval at town meeting and an approval at the ballot. And so that's exactly what happened in the Phelps Elementary School case. What was authorized based on the budget was an $86 million project. It actually came in significantly under budget, closer to the $72, $73 million range.
And what role do you have in handling the businesses in town?
Sure. So I don't really have a role with businesses sort of once they're up and operating, other than to the extent that they need inspections on a yearly basis or licenses, things like that. I think the bigger role tends to be in trying to help encourage economic development, try to bring businesses into town. And unfortunately, one of the biggest constraints we have in town is lack of capacity, lack of supply for both water and sewer. So that's really one of the biggest hurdles that we face, and we're actively working on it. The PFAS filtration that I talked about will make our water cleaner, but that's not generating more supply of water. We're constrained by the environment there. And on the sewer side, what's very difficult is there's a permit from the state for how much discharge, how much sewage we're allowed to clean and then ultimately discharge. So we have a lot of constraints around that. So that does make it difficult. I think another area to help facilitate bringing businesses into town is with zoning. We could have a whole conversation about zoning, but those are basically local bylaws, local laws that regulate what types of uses of land can be allowed in different places. Some places might be residential only, others might allow for businesses or different types of businesses, and we've done that periodically in my time here, where we've gone back working with our planning board. There's a whole legal process for that, ultimately town meeting, to revise zoning bylaws that might help facilitate economic development and bring businesses in the appropriate areas.
What's the process of bringing a new business into town?
Right. So it all depends. So it could be a business contacting me saying, we're the X corporation, this is what we do, we'd like to come to town, can you help us? So the first step I would probably do in that case would be refer them to the town planner. We have a land use planner, and then she would look at our zoning map, look at where the appropriate physical district is in the town where they could locate, and then help them understand that process. And different types of businesses might be able to get started what they call by right. By right means, they can just automatically open their doors and open for business. Other types of businesses, per our local zoning bylaws, could require a special permit. That just means that they have to go before our local zoning board of appeals, answer a lot of questions, make sure that they have all the different impacts of their business covered, and then the zoning board of appeals would give them a special permit. So it all depends on the type of business. So depending on that, our role might be to help guide them through that process, or to let them know they don't need to go through that process at all. There's other types of things that we haven't really done in my time here, but could theoretically be possible, where there are things called TIFs, tax increment financing, where if certain conditions are met, we could look at, with town meeting approval, giving essentially tax breaks to help facilitate businesses coming into town. But that's a very high hurdle to make, and we haven't done that in the past 6 years that I've been here.
What is your opinion on the Rockland Federal Credit Union moving from their original location to where the abandoned BK is?
Sure. So, I obviously can't speak to internal business decisions, why they're choosing to make that move. I'm sure it's in the best interest of that bank. The Burger King has been vacant for a while. It's a source of blight in town. So I'm certainly very excited that, that blight's going to be removed and they're going to construct a beautiful new bank building. That's a great location. And it does open up a huge opportunity for the town right across from Town Hall with the potential future development on that site. And that's another example where, as people ask us about that, we can help steer people in the right direction, who the contacts are at the bank, what the allowed uses are in our local zoning bylaws, what the town might prefer for the types of businesses. But it's a great opportunity because there's a lot of parking. It's prime real estate right on Union Street. But it is out of our hands. We don't control the property. We can't force someone to buy it or direct the seller who to sell it to, but we can help provide information and guide folks.
Are there any plans to do anything with the land where the original credit union building was once they move, or is that more up to the bank?
Yeah, that'll be up to the bank and the buyer. And our only role in that would be just making sure, again, that they're following local bylaws on what the uses are.
And then obviously Rockland and a few other towns have a joint waterworks. Do you know what brought up putting together the waterworks systems of the towns?
The joint waterworks?
Yeah.
So, it was a long time ago. I think it was in the 1800s. My guess is it's only two towns, Abington and Rockland. As I'm sure you know, Rockland was part of Abington, up until the time that we split. So I imagine, what happened was we were one town. We needed to have a water system that was built out, and then when the towns split, it still made sense to maintain that integrated water system and not try to separate them and start all over again. So that's my guess, but I haven't really researched it.
Wouldn't it be better to split the waterworks as well, so we can have our own waterworks to improve the quality better?
Well, I think your question assumes that would somehow make it easier for us to improve the quality, and I don't really think that's the case. It would dramatically increase our costs to have to duplicate the entire system. So, you'd have to duplicate everything: personnel, treatment plants, everything's already physically interconnected. And so again, just for example, the treatment project I mentioned to help clean up the PFAS in the water, that's a $26 million project. That only cost $13 million for Rockland and $13 million for Abington. So if we were going to do it on our own, that would most likely cost us, maybe not the full $26 million, but a lot more than the 13. So I don't think it would really make sense, because it would really force us to recreate the wheel and duplicate things and lose that efficiency, that economy of scale. Similarly, for example, why do we have, one high school? Why don't we have two high schools? Well, that would cost a lot more money. We'd have to build two buildings and maintain two buildings and all that infrastructure. It's more efficient to consolidate where proper.
And then what is your favorite part about Rockland?
My favorite part about it, to be honest, I think my favorite part is honestly the community pride and the community spirit. I've worked in a lot of different places. I've worked in different states, but this is a really proud town, a proud community, and that's something that was made clear to me the first day I went and explored the town before I applied. And all the people I've met, whether it's students, parents, employees, voters, athletes, people in the arts, everybody's really proud of this town, and that's exciting. It's exciting to be a part of.
And then my last question for you, which I think is probably the hardest question that you will have to answer today. What is your favorite place to get pizza from in Rockland?
Oh boy, I'm gonna make some enemies there. That's tough. You're really putting me on the spot, huh? Well, I'll say this. I tend to go to Mike's Pizza the most often, but we do have a lot of great places in town. So I don't want that to imply that the others aren't equally good, but just the proximity to Town Hall, I do tend to go to Mike's.
All right, that is all the questions that I have for you today, Mr. Lapp. Thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate it, and I will take you up on maybe talking with you more about other topics that maybe we didn't reach today.
All right, sounds good. Anytime.
And thank you for watching this episode of the Bulldog Breakdown. As always, it is a very special episode. I'm your host, James Levasseur, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you.